What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Roly from AVAT. Thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me on the show. Having a good day here in South Florida, so it's looking pretty nice out here.
Yeah, it's freezing up here in New York, so I wouldn't say that. No need to brag right now, I gotta say. But it's so awesome to have you here. You have the new single "Dead or Alive" out now, which is just premiering over at New Noise. The single is absolutely awesome. What I was just curious is, could this maybe serve as like a clear representation on what maybe a full-length AVAT record would sound like, or is that just like scratching the surface or the tip of the iceberg, as I like to say?
It's definitely scratching at the surface of what we're capable of. A lot of us come from different backgrounds. And, just musically speaking, everyone's kind of a bit all over the place. So, and we enjoy that. We really kind of appreciate taking things to a different level, just having that opportunity to create something unique. And we don't try to tie ourselves to just one specific kind of genre. We definitely say that we're metal. But as far as pinpointing us down to anything specific, I would really leave that up to the listener. You'll hear definitely a couple of releases, throughout the next couple of months, and it'll just show that we're very dynamic.
Which is awesome. And when it comes to experimenting with your sound, does it always start off with maybe a preconceived idea, let's go in this direction, or does it kind of happen by accident in a way, happy accidents, as I like to say?
So at first, when we started to get together as a band, we tried to dial in, a lot of our favorite artists at the time. There's too many to count. But, August Burns Red, and I had Thrice myself, and just everybody was coming from a different angle. And then we had a couple, stands in the band of just the more technical, death, the metal, and that kind of stuff. And I think that as far as how we write, it starts, with the concept, right? We have usually our guitarist will write something out, and then I'll go ahead and I'll start to throw my 2 cents in, and then we'll start to develop the song that way. So if I feed back to them, maybe a hook, they'll come back and they'll give me, the next verse, and they'll try and give me some transitions and whatnot, and we'll continue to formulate that process. But lately, we're actually taking a step back from that, and we're trying to write vocal melodies before we try and start writing the music. So that just goes to show, how unique we are as a band, and as far as the writing format, it's ever changing. So,
which is cool. It has to keep it engaging, and obviously, I've always said that when the process and the materials and the way that you go into a song can ultimately affect the outcomes. So it has to make this. It's not like you have a formula or a sort of assembly line effect of making songs, right?
Right, and another aspect that has come into play in more recent memory is, having been able to work with the team over at Apocalypse Records. They've been able to give us tools that, even some of the groups in the majors don't even have access to, and they give us a tool that allows us to kind of highlight the release out front during the release, especially if it's, with a video. Because, once you click on the link, you can immediately see the content, right?
Yeah.
So there's no clicking through anything. You have everything at your fingertips and ready to play for you. When you're done, we give you other links to some of the stores or directly to our, our channel over on YouTube, if they end up wanting to see more of that content.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to because you all have many different inspirations, and it's interesting with having an experimental sound, because I feel like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If all of your songs have a consistent formula, people will argue that the music's repetitive. If you are very experimental, people will say you're all over the place. So I feel like in the end, you just have to go with your gut instinct.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're here trying to make music that we like.
Mm-hmm.
If people dig it, we're going to feed into that. We're going to love it. We're going to enjoy it just as much as they do. and we're welcoming that. But you know, it doesn't limit us by getting criticism. It doesn't, you know, and I wouldn't say necessarily it's a challenge, because at the end of the day, we're going to write how we feel, right? We want to convey a message out to the public, and that's really, you know, I guess that's really the tough question. What we try to answer every time that we get to the drawing board is, you know, how do we want this person to perceive this song, or us in general, right? Like, what do we want to talk about? What do we want to have them listen to? Mm-hmm. So,
have you always, like, because you mentioned that there's sometimes like a concept, has there ever been a time where maybe like lyrics or a concept could also dictate the direction of the music as well?
Yeah, we toyed around with a concept previously. I won't go into the details of it, but we had a storyline with an arc that kind of took you through a person's life. And that played out differently. I ended up writing a little more to my subconscious there than anything, because I was trying to make it fit to the storyline, right? And I'm not sure anyone's other experiences, but as far as writing to a concept, but definitely I found that challenging, but it was fun, because at the end of the day, you're trying to write for this story. You're trying to make it make sense. You want to make it grandiose. And not only that, but sonically, you also want to give it that touch and feel, you know?
Definitely. Have you ever had like the best lyrics ever, and then they're always like one syllable over like every arrangement of every song?
What's that?
Have you ever had like the best lyrics ever, but then they're always like they're always like one syllable over the arrangement of every song?
All the time, man. All the time. In fact, I am working with Phil from All That Remains right now.
Oh, great vocalist.
He's fantastic, and fantastic to work with as well. We've been working on one of our upcoming singles, just kind of touching base as far as like what message I want to convey, and trying to stay true to the original message. So we've hit some areas where some of the lyrics have had to get like dialed back. So I'm very formulaic as far as like how I want to write my choruses and that kind of stuff, and the verses as well. Very kind of like Max Martin kind of way, you know, where you'll have like a certain number of syllables on one line, and then you have a subsequent number of syllables on the second, and then that pattern repeats. So I like that, because it kind of plays to that whole catchiness and whatnot. And it's also challenging, because trying to find that right combination of words and continue to stay on topic, you know, it takes some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And being that you approach the music itself from so many different angles, I mean, there's so many different angles where you could approach the lyrics, both like in terms of subject matter and also like if it's more literal, like very upfront, or if it's very metaphorical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, trying to, I guess my goal has more recently been to try and be more literal with my writing. And so a lot of listeners can kind of get that from what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So, you know, that metaphorical aspect will never leave, but definitely they should be on the lookout for the more literal sense, because I want to make it, you know, as relatable as possible.
Yeah, and damned if you do, again, damned if you don't. If it's very, very literal, they're going to say that the lyrics are shallow, and if it's very metaphorical, people are going to say, like, oh, well, you know, what the hell is he saying? So I think in the end, it's just a gut instinct that you have to go with.
Absolutely.
In order to get, like, inspired to write, like, do you need to, like, be in a certain place at a certain time, or do you need to look for inspiration, or do ideas just come, like, out of nowhere?
I'd like to say that when I started to write lyrics for writing lyrics and not really to the music, that's when I had to start thinking about, you know, the concept or the message, right? So I'll usually I'll find the core of that message and I'll do some kind of homework, right? I'll think about my past history. I'll think about the rest of the band as well, and kind of take a look at, how do I want the listener to perceive, right? So I'll try and take that angle. And other times when I'm going to like a pre-written riff or something like that, it's a lot easier, I find it, because it just kind of flows out of me, And it ends up being more subconscious at that point, but, I have a really easy time kind of writing to and finding the rhythmic pattern and then writing my own melodies aside to the guitar work.
Yeah, and I'd imagine, too, inspiration sometimes strikes at the most inconvenient times as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I try and keep paper and pen with me, but I usually just keep notes on my phone. That has been the savior at times, because you're doing something and you're like 500 feet away from the closest pen and paper. If you have your phone, you can just quickly record that thought and then get back to it, or I can send it off to the guys and then they'll be like, oh, that sounds dope. Let's go ahead and write to something like this and see where it takes us. So, I mean, thankfully with modern technology, that kind of has been there to support us.
Yeah, I'm just always hoping that pilots are not artists, because I don't want them to get inspired as they're like approaching the tarmac or something like that.
Oh, man. I mean, you would think that would be the case.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody was so excited when Bruce Dickinson was flying his plane. I was terrified. So
I couldn't imagine him writing throughout that or being inspired in the middle of that. Oh, wait.
Yeah, or just
use my knees.
Or just imagine he pages the pages like the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, I just came up with some sick riff ideas, so I'm just going to hum this in here so nobody forgets it. Yeah,
that would be inviting, definitely.
That'll be better than that article about that hardcore pilot who says that this flight is dedicated to all you real motherfuckers in coach. Now, like with all of your songs, like, going from, a single such as Dead or Alive or Wolves or Together We Fall, like it almost seems like I got many different vibes as well. So like obviously you have different sounds, you have different, influences, but it's clear to say that there's also many different emotions with the music itself as well, right?
Absolutely. And it really depends on how that music has come about. Like, I mean, if it's something that was written previous, and I've gone to the drawing board and tried to write lyrics to, I'll kind of feed off of that, that emotion from the music and try and see what Dimitri was kind of like working on, or John on his bass. So I'll kind of try and get to a place where I can kind of envision what's going on with just the music, and then I'll write to that.
Okay, and like it's funny too, because really when you like get into this inspiration, and when you like, I feel like the longer you work on something too, the harder it has to be to kind of like maintain that emotion, right?
It does and doesn't. I mean, sometimes I've been able to come back to a project and months later kind of like really figure it out. And sometimes you'll get that writer's block where you just feel that you're not in a good place to continue working on that subject. So, rather than kind of like beat a dead horse, you don't want to kind of, I guess, exacerbate that option. You don't want to make it, force it. I don't want to force it because I want it to be natural. I want there to have some substance behind it. I try and take the songs as personal as possible if I can. If not, then I don't really feel the connection there. So that's one of the things that's really important to me, because if I don't feel the connection myself, then what makes me think that someone else would?
Yeah, well, and then there's also the moment where like you feel the creative drive, like you have that creative energy, and you just really want to like put the pen to paper, but like nothing comes out too. That's got to also really be frustrating at times, right?
Absolutely. It happened to me when I first tried to write some of the music. Some of the vocal patterns and stuff before writing the music, and I found it frustrating because you have this preconceived notion of like, okay, let's write a metal song, and I'm there kind of like singing it out and whatnot, and I'm coming up with some, I would say, are pretty good hooks, you know. But to me, I can't really tell if they're metal or not, you know. So, like, I have to take a look at the substance matter. I have to take a look at how it sounds, and then I have to try and envision, like, where they're going to take it musically. And then from there, I didn't feel on some of them that I was really accomplishing that until I gave it over to Dimitri and John. They're like, no, I see where you're going with it. It kind of sounds like this. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So it does sound more technical, or maybe like breakdown-ish or this kind of stuff. And maybe we can kind of work on that and develop it. And so they'll come in and they'll kind of take it and make it their own thing. And that has helped me, but definitely it is probably the most difficult thing that I've had to do as a writer, is to write from scratch.
Ooh, well, I'm about to give you something more difficult now, because I got the most difficult question of the whole interview up next. You ready?
I'm ready for it, man. Shoot.
How do you know when a song is done?
How do I know when a song is done? My friend, I will tell you that I know a song is done when it is released.
That was so, I'm not even kidding, that this was one of the deepest discussions I've had over the phone, and that was so anticlimactic, like just going up, 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 and then boom, like 90 degrees.
Because, I mean, you have to consider, like, there's so many steps in the process of writing a song, and then we also have our label that we work with. We want to make sure that that at the end of the day, when we release something, it's going to be received well, right? So we take things into consideration, like, you know, the climate that we're in right now, just, you know, politically, emotionally, everything, you know, everything kind of like plays off one another. So the last thing we would want to do is kind of like release a ballad in the middle of like a political climate. You know what I mean?
Hey, you never know. There's been some, I mean, you know, I'm sure there'll be a good new Sweet Child of Mine coming out of this one way or another. There's times where people are falling in love.
We'll see, man. I mean, we have some ballads that are going to be coming out, and I think those will really be surprising. But we chose to wait on those, and as a result of that, we had the opportunity to revisit these, and I think that the songs are better because of it. Like, I mean, at one point I thought this one song that I'm working with Phil now was complete. You know, I thought it was what I wanted. I thought it sounded great, and from what I heard, you know, showing it to close friends and family, everyone thought it sounded great. Then all of a sudden, we get the opportunity to work with Phil, and I'm starting to get a lot of feedback from the label, and they're saying, well, maybe we could take it this way. Maybe we could just change the direction just a bit, or maybe rewrite it so it makes a little bit more sense, like, you know, canonically, and just and get to the real substance, the meat of it, right?
Yeah.
And that, you don't get those opportunities if you just kind of like rush through something.
Yeah. And working with Phil too. I mean, Phil is like, because All That Remains, I consider to be people call them the metalcore, like one of the metalcore leaders. But I mean, you compare Behind Silence and Solitude, which is a straight up Morbid Angel death metal album, to, you know, like a ballad like What If I Was Nothing. I mean, so like when it comes to, you know, experimenting with a sound, it's good to get input from somebody like Phil.
Of course, and he has been fantastic to work with. Like, I mean, he doesn't like walk all over the project. He's actually been very spacious as far as like, you know, chiming in on his 2 cents, and he's been very forthcoming and honest. And I really appreciate that, especially knowing who he is. And I think this is the first foray that he's had as far as like writing with another individual for music that wasn't his own project, right?
Yeah, the only band I know that he sang with other was Josta. I can't think of any other collaborations he's done.
Yeah, I mean, but like as far as like somebody else's music and just kind of like helping them write for, you know, that kind of stuff, I think that it's done really well, like as far as the process. So I'm really excited to continue working with him on a couple other things that we have lined up, but definitely this one will kind of stick in my memory as he was very humble, and I really appreciate everything that I learned from him that that day. So I can't wait. Like there's so much more to come, and I see it, on the horizon, and a person like Phil can come in and kind of like help us take it to another level. I think really that's the goal.
Yeah, definitely. And, as an artist, like you, and kind of going back to what I said, like with the times that we're living in right now. And, I've learned this a lot. I've had this artistic debate with a lot of people. Like some people say that, art is my escape from reality and it always comes from within and I'm not influenced by the world. That is such a lie. The world is going to influence you one way or another. You are a product of the environment that you're living in. So one way or another, the world is going to inspire you. So.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, there's too much going on that it's not going to affect you, in one way, shape, or another. Everybody's been touched by COVID. Everybody has been touched by the economy, and just on a global scale, as humanity, we have learned, and not learned in some cases, how to address certain things. And I think, and I hope that we might come from this, better as a society.
Well, I've been saying that
for one another, right?
Yeah. Well, I've been saying that when all this is eventually over, we are going to enter the best era of music of all time. I think ever.
Dude, I agree with you. I mean, everybody has had time. Think about that. So, if anything, there has been time on our hands, and just the substance that everybody is, having at their fingertips right now. There's going to be a lot of emotion. There's going to be a lot of pushback. I think we might get a new renaissance of rock out of this.
And I think for all arts too, like theater and, like stuff that might have been like looked at as like a dying art in a way, like, theater or visual art or, stuff that wasn't as appreciated before. I think in the end, people are just going to be happy to see any form of creativity.
Absolutely. I have never been to a Broadway performance myself, but I was a theater kid. And man, let me tell you, I'd die to go back on stage in any way, shape, or form. So, it's like it's crazy. Just to think that it's so close yet so far because of certain restrictions. And I think you're right, man. We're gonna really see a lot of fantastic content. I mean, you have people out there that are just starting to tip their toes in the water and finding out that they love to do art in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Well, look at how My Chemical Romance started. I mean, My Chemical Romance started because Gerard Way witnessed the tragedy of 9/11. He was like across the street from where the towers fell. So like he was just like, he woke up the next morning and was like, fuck this, I'm starting a band. And look at what happened. Yeah. So, and you mentioned you're a theater kid, so does maybe having a theater background influence you as a frontman?
Yeah, I think it has lent some inspiration to the theatricality of what we do. We are trying our best to kind of like work this whole live setup with a lot of light show and that kind of stuff. And it's always keeping me on my toes. I'm looking at other artists and seeing what they're doing. And one band comes to mind, Mute Math.
Who?
Mute Math.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think they have such a wonderful live performance, not just themselves and their energy, but the stage production behind it. I think that was pretty much one of the, as far as like the medium level bands, I think that they were really it for what you could possibly do, and then there are other bands that I really enjoyed watching live, System of a Down to name that, and Mars Volta. Man, Mars Volta was fantastic. Like, I remember seeing them, and they were just fucking off the wall, crazy.
You need to see Cult of Luna when they could tour again. They were one of the last bands I saw before the whole lockdown happened, and they have an insane light show.
That's awesome. I have to see that, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited because like there's new technologies too that are coming up now, and we're gonna be seeing more holographic stuff. So I'm excited for all of that to become accessible to mid-level musicians.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And last but not least, just before we go, first off, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote with like some new singles? This will be uploaded by midnight, so if it hasn't been announced yet, don't say it here. But is there anything you would like to promote in terms of like live stream performances, new merch, or anything like that?
So as far as promotion, we should be getting our new single here that we've been working on having mixed by. I lost the name. I lost the name of the song. It's
maybe better off surprise people.
It's definitely going to be a banger. We're working with a couple people on this, and it's just been a whirlwind. So I think and the producer that we're working on the song with, and I'm sorry that I keep coming back to the name of the song, but I think that we're waiting because it's tentatively titled on finally solidifying that name. Or we're working with Josh Wilbur to finish out that song.
Oh, that's great.
Be coming. So that one's definitely going to be a banger, and I'm expecting that one to go really well. I'd really like everybody to follow us and just, keep tabs on us. We're really active on Instagram. We try and go live from time to time and just kind of like shoot the shit with our fans. So if they want to drop us a line, go ahead. We'd be more than happy to talk with everybody.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with AVAT. Be sure to check out their newest singles that are absolutely kick-ass. Check out Brenna. Check out Dead or Alive. Check out Wolves. Check out Together We Fall. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.